I want to talk to you about the hand router plane because there's a lot of confusion surrounding it and there's a lot of misinformation that might be unhelpful to you. So I want to straighten this out for you so that you can use your router for the rest of your life, knowing with confidence that you know how to set, sharpen and use the plane. The most important thing is the cutting iron, as it is with most hand tools. So let me offer this so that if I put my finger on this point, that's a high point on the blade. Going across the long axis of the plane, that means this is higher than this side. That means something's out of parallel. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be parallel, but you have to start with a datum point some way. So we start with the sole of the plane because that's what this blade has to register to the sole of the plane. So this is the governor and this needs to be in relationship with it. This point is higher than the heel. That's engineered that way. The reason is that there has to be a relief on the back edge of the sole of the plane. Otherwise, if it was level, some people take a file or abrasive and flatten it with the sole, get it dead parallel, dead sharp and think it will cut. It won't cut. It can't cut because there's no relief. So this was engineered into the plane, so it's necessary. We want to keep that, and so we're going to take a look at how do we get this, because it's out of parallel to the sole of the plane. Then if we take too much off the bottom on one side or the other, then it will be out of parallel in the cut. If we take too much on one side of the bevel or the other, we have the same problem. So let's start out with showing how the plane is working in relation to the surface of the cut. So I've withdrawn my blade. I'm going to put this on the surface of a straight piece of wood. If I put my plane on here and then drop the blade into the surface, just turning this adjuster until I get down to a depth, until it's just kissing the surface. It's almost there. So what happens here, what we really want with this plane is we want a perfectly parallel recess that we cut with the plane. So when I place this on now, because I've adjusted it down, what I've got on one side is I've got fuzzy edges where the plane is cut, but the blade is 1/2 inch wide. So this area, the 1/2 inch from this line, is not cutting at all. If I go a little bit deeper, it'll be more exaggerated. Let's see if I can do this. A little bit too much. This is so important to get this right, and I think you'll see why. Let me move over a little bit here. So now I've got one side. So in other words, it's sloping. If I go parallel to that, take these fuzzy bits off so I'm still lying parallel to the surface. If I'm going parallel to this over here, I end up with a step. So all the way across, when I'm making my recess, I've got these steps. It looks terrible. And if I was doing a veneer in there, it wouldn't sit right. So I've got to get this right. It's something I've got to work on. So I'm going to first of all remove the blade, the cutting iron, like this. And I'm going to look at this part, the top bevel. So this point is lower on the bevel, which means it's been filed out of square or ground out of square or sharpened out of square. This point is higher. So I really have to take this side here down until it's fairly looking square across. But of course, as I said, the underside, because it's this not quite an L shape, I have to work on that soon too. So first of all, I'm going to work on the top bevel. So I'm going to bring this vise in because it is meant for metal work and it holds better. So what I'm going to do is clamp the shoe, the cutting iron, in the vise like this. Get a good firm grip on it, and you can overhang on the outside if you need to. And I'm going to file down this side. Now the nice thing about this particular brand, the Stanley, I think, and the Record, is usually they are hardened steel, but they're not so hard that you can't file them. So I'm using a regular flat file, and I'm going to file on here. Let me just cut this leather out of the way so you can see. So I'm going to take my file and file this top edge here and get down to the cutting edge and make this a good long bevel. So we're looking to get about 30 degrees, 25 to 30 degrees on this, and I just keep taking this down until I'm taking it down off the bevel a little bit. So file, let's take a look, still out of square. And it may be that the very cutting edge is harder than the file, in which case you'd have to use something like this. These are diamond paddles. You could use a diamond hone on here to get this down, and it will cut just about everything because diamonds are hard. Or you can use an abrasive like this, just glued to a piece of wood, and that will cut it too. So there are a couple of options there. The file is usually the quickest way to get that bevel down to where you need it. So we'll take a look in a minute. And I think we're getting closer, but we're not there quite yet. So I am definitely looking at, once I take the burr off, I can see that I've got lower on this side and the bevel is looking more like where I want it. I just need it straight now, so I've got to do that and I will be there. So just patience, perseverance, file it down until you've got what you need. You want square corners if you can get them. So go right up until you've got the bevel even. I would say I'm fairly close to that. Remember, the burr might not show, but I'm getting there. The top of my bevel is looking nice and flat now. I can start working on that. I can start working on the underside. That's where we're going to go next. Too many vice handles to choose from here. This is something that I've never seen addressed anywhere. This underside and top side of the cutting iron. So we drop this into the plane again. This time we're going to work on the underside a little bit. So get this located in the post here. This is the post. And make sure the blade is just above the surface. See, it's rocking here. So I take this up like this. Now, I don't know if that will cut yet. It probably will. But if I take this now, I'm still slightly off. I'm still slightly out of parallel, but I don't want to go too far because it may mean that I need to take some off the underside of the sole. And I need some I need some masking tape here. What we're going to do is we're going to mask off the main part of the sole because we don't want to score that. So make sure you've got no kinks in your tape, like this. This will keep it parallel to the surface, or the blade parallel to the surface. So we go in here. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. And it's just really just to protect the sole. Now I'm going to go on here Doesn't really matter whether you go with the fine or the coarse, but I think I probably would go with the fine. Make sure that the blade is up above the surface completely. You don't want any contact with the surface to start with. When you lock it off, so I'm taking nothing off that leading edge on the underside. Turn it a quarter turn, nothing. Now that felt like it was having contact with the surface. Nothing. We'll just keep going. Nope. What I'm looking for is a band of light on the underside of the blade. Just a narrow band of light. So I'm going to take a pass now. Now I could feel that biting into the surface of the stone, and there's a band of light on there that's about 1 millimeter wide on one side, but 0 on the other side. So that means I want to go a little bit lower to get that band of light to where it hits that corner. Then I'll be able to determine exactly where I need to do a little bit more honing and shaping and so on. So now I'm going to take just a little notch deeper, not much. It looks like I'm turning that wheel a lot, but I'm relying on the sole, so I don't want to take too much. I'm going to back off there because it was rocking too much. So what I've got now, I've hit the corner. I'm right on the corner. This side is much broader than I want it to be. So I now balance this out between the underside of the blade and the top side. I'm going to try and get that equal on both sides so that my blade will be parallel to the surface. But remember, it's not critical for this to be square across. It's not critical. What's critical is that the cutting edge is parallel to the sole of the plane. That's the most critical element. So aesthetically, it would be nice if it was dead square. If it's not, what matters is whether it's cutting parallel. So now I can work on the underside of the blade and the top side if I need to. Get rid of this for now. I don't really need to take that off, but remove the blade. And now what I've got to do is I've got to flatten this sole. So I'm going to keep this angle, this pitch on the underside like that. I'm going to put it onto my coarse stone here. A little bit of fluid just to keep the plate clear. And I'm just going to put my finger, I want to press harder on one side than the other. So I'm pressing harder on the right side. And I keep it dead flat to the sole. I'm not sure how much of this you're going to see, but I'm pressing very hard on my right. I'm keeping it down on the sole, and really, generally, we don't have to do this very often. So it is creeping up on the band of light. It's reducing the width of that band. Keep it flat, keep it flat. Don't be tempted to lift up on the leading edge. It's going down. It's going down very nicely. And now that band of light is about half the distance it was. So I'm going on the finer stone. This is the medium stone, 6 to 800 grit. And the band of light is almost disappeared, but not quite. And there, I'm happy with what I've got. I believe this is a decent cutting edge already. So I'm happy that I'm going to turn this around, press from this side. So it's a lot of finger strength in this. So now I've got what I want. I've got a narrow band of light, just barely discernible, but that will help guide me on the top bevel. For this top surface, for the top bevel, I usually just place something in the vise like this and it will almost always do exactly what I want. So I put this in here, then I bring in a paddle like this and I adjust the height in the vise until I've got the bevel I want. So I'm coming up a little bit. Now I don't want to follow the exact bevel because what I'm working on now is the very cutting edge. So this is like a micro bevel on that leading edge. So I keep adjusting until the paddle is slightly more steep than the bevel I'm cutting. And I place this here, this leading edge of the bevel, flush with the corner, and then I keep it in position and I just start to use this is resting on the bench here, and I just use this paddle now to put a micro bevel on my top edge. And that's creating exactly what I want. So a little circular movement. And there is my micro bevel. So I can feel a slight burr on this underside. I'm going with a finer one now. So this is about 1200 grit. And with a router, you don't have to go beyond that 1200 grit. I look on the top side. Of course, this is a braiding steel out on the top, but it's also a braiding on the underside. So I can feel a burr on this side. I could just simply use the blade now without any problem because that burr will just break off. So once I've polished that out, I don't have to polish it with a strop, but I can polish it with a strop if I want to. So the burr is on the underside. Just pull the sole, keeping it dead flat against this strop. That's just abrasive compound on the surface. And that pulls the burr off. And I have a cutting edge now. I can trail this cutting edge here and just pull that to polish out the back edge, the leading edge of the bevel. That takes off any burr and it gives me a pristine edge. So we can reload that into the plane now and just see how well we did. See how we did. A true test, of course. And it may be that I need to micro adjust even more. It may be. But now it looks, the leading edge of the cutting edge is now running parallel to the long axis of the sole. So now I'm getting a parallel cut, parallel to the surface, which is exactly what you want. This is what this plane is designed for. It's for cutting the bottom of recesses. I use it for surfacing my tenons, for forming my tenons, for perfecting, taking those initial surface planings that give me that pristine cut. And that's what you want. This is a plane now. You've initialized it. You've got this surface, the underside of the sole, exactly where you want it. All the sharpening from now on will be just on the bevel, and that's up to you. If you keep it parallel to the underside, you'll be fine. You won't have to do that again for a number of years. Just remember that this plane is an amazing tool, and once you start using it, you'll wonder how you lived without it.